Hi, my name is Sarah Nance, and this is my Module 16 case study, Missing Booster Club Funds. So for Category 1, what do I know? I know that Daniel Stevens is a principal. He's in his 4th year at George Washington Middle School. It's a smaller school in an older urban neighborhood of Warren. He's well liked, and that he acknowledges that a lot of families that have been part of the school for some time have moved to attend school in the suburbs. So attendance and socioeconomic status of students and families has decreased in recent years, but the families who are here are pretty loyal, engaged, and supportive of the school. So the problem starts with a committed family, the Bowmans. Lucy Bowman, the student, is an acclaimed cheerleader, and she is ready to perform in a parade in New York City. And her mother often volunteers and works the gate at events to collect funds for the school. She's part of the PTA. She asked that Mr. Stevens, the principal, pay for an $800 trip to New York from the funds, collected by the PTA. It seems to me that she might be leveraging her volunteer hours as a way to pay for her daughter's trip to New York, but Mr. Stevens denied the request. He argued that the money raised for the school should be used on student groups and that the request did not fall within the scope of those parameters. So, during the following week, Mrs. Bowman worked the gate at a basketball game, and as Mr. Stevens was there, he was speaking with a community member, Mr. Dumas, and he reported that he had paid the gate fee with his freshly cashed $50 bill from part of his paycheck. But after the game, the $50 bill itself was missing when Mr. Stevens went to secure and deposit the money. He had just specifically remembered that from his conversation with him. Mrs. Bowman additionally reported that 10 tickets were damaged and thus torn and not sold, which accounted for the missing $50, and just oddly enough, it added up to $50. So for the remainder of the case study, I'll assume the role of the principal, Mr. Stevens, or just the principal if it were a woman for me for the remainder. So what I would need to know moving forward is if I'm going to think that Miss Bowman stole the money, I need to review some district information regarding PTA finances, like what happens when there's discrepancies between reports and funds deposited, and assuming that we have sound policies in place at Warren, I would assume that those documents exist so that I could brush up on them or be able to reach out to someone who would have the information. I would try to follow up with Mr. Dumas in our conversation, although casual, that he did in fact pay with a $50 bill, and without telling him too many details, just try to see if I can get that information from him just to corroborate the story and the facts. And I would just immediately set up a meeting with Mrs. Bowman, a couple days later to for me to gather the information that I need before we just dive right into this investigation. I need to know her position on the story. I need to explain to her my perspective and say, hey, look, here's where I'm coming from. There's a missing $50 bill. Here's what you said, but something's not adding up. We need to investigate a little further. So obviously would let her explain her side before assuming the money had been stolen, but taking her side above all, that perhaps it was an error and or whatever she was saying was the truth. Maybe she wasn't telling the truth, but maybe there was an error and she was covering for that error. So the problem is that the money is missing. We obviously have to address that first. The dollar amount itself isn't a big deal, but the community needs to know that integrity and honesty and transparency about missing money is paramount to my administration, and that I'm going to make it a priority to fix it when I can. So we obviously, if this is a common problem, or perhaps it's even happened before, I hope not, we need to look at the handling of funds and implement some safeguards that will prevent this from happening in the future. So I have a 3-step approach: communication, documentation, and decision-making and implementation. That's how I'm going to kind of break down how we need to address the problem in 3 separate ways. So for example, communication. I got to talk to the district. Like I said, I have to confer with the district financial office and possibly the superintendent about some policies. My Category 1 kind of addressed that. Mr. Dumas, I need to check in with him, verify the bills spent. And then obviously Mrs. Bowman, I need to ask her to be straightforward and honest for everyone's benefit. We'll move past it if I can, trust her or trust her account, whatever that may be. Documentation. I obviously need to document the details of our meetings, both at the district and the state, if necessary, per our meeting. I need to get a written statement from Mr. Dumas assuring that his ticket was paid with a $50 bill. And if I could prove it via a bank statement, I would ask for it. I'm not sure I could. It's just if there's some kind of bank that he was a part of that could verify bills taken out, or someplace in the school where we could see that he had paid with a $50 bill, I'd try to obtain that information. And then I would take copious notes upon conversing with Mrs. Bowman. I would also have another person present to verify her testimony, like the PTA president or the bookkeeper, etc., so that what she says and what I say are heard by somebody else. Finally, decision making and implementation. I would just remind Mrs. Bowman for honesty and transparency. You know, she's a valued member of our community. So I would respect her to do that, and I'd tell her as such. If she admits that she took the money, she'd be asked to repay the $50 and then quietly be removed from the PTA. You know, I wouldn't make it a big deal, but I'd just ask her not to be a part of the association. You know, it's like I said, it's not a huge dollar amount. There's no way I would pursue any kind of criminal charge or any of that, theft charge. It's not about that. It's just about making it right, just kind of going our separate ways. You know, I got to kind of take her word if she stands by her story. I am assuming she's not going to admit it. So if she doesn't, I'm going to have to kind of stand by her story, because without a lot of evidence, like camera footage or bank statement, any of that, I really can't verify. It's, you know, it's my word against hers at that point. But I would be using this as an example for the community and other stakeholders that my commitment and warning about following up and making this a serious offense and ensuring the issue will be corrected to the best of my ability would be kind of the ulterior but, you know, main goal. I want to empower the PTA members. I want to meet with them. I want to brainstorm, problem solve, strategize how we can avoid this moving forward. I have some ideas for some safeguards based on my reading from our textbook. You know, maybe having 2 people work the gate instead of just 1. Maybe computerizing the system so it really won't let you check out for the night until you've balanced. Installing cameras in the ticket booth, I think, would be a sound practice. Not accepting bills larger than $20 to make the incentive for stealing pretty low. Counting money together with the receipt or the bookkeeper or me. So that could be just like a rule for any volunteers who offer to work the gate. And maybe if Mrs. Bowman is really, you know, being awkward about this or not, you know, acting like she's being truthful, maybe we ask her to just take another position in the PTA for volunteering rather than taking money or being around money. So how I resolve this issue based on the success of all students for Category 3 is, you know, knowing that the money that's raised by events and groups and parent groups is for the benefit of all students. So it's important that I set this example for conduct, professionalism, class integrity, and yet giving due process to Mrs. Bowman and trying to resolve the conflict, you know, together. I would try to resolve the issue so that the money and all future money goes to those students as directed by the PTA. I assume our documents support that. And, you know, that they're not going to a certain family or it's not out for revenge for denying that family. You know, so no personal family funding. So what I was thinking during this case study was, you know, honestly, I'm thinking Mrs. Bowman stole the money as a way to get back at me for denying the request to pay for her daughter's trip. I'd be thinking about my conversation with her about how do I come off as like in control and strong, but also like not feeling upset or angry. Is it possible for me to be logical and fair? I'd like to think so, without bringing a lot of emotion into it. And how can my conversation with her be positive but firm? I would also be thinking that, you know, are there other funds or events that may have been compromised by unclear or inconsistent policies that I need to double check in with or look at a little bit more closely? I was feeling angry, annoyed, embarrassed that other people might know that this is a common practice, angry that somebody would take advantage of me when we're asking them to volunteer at our school. I'd also be feeling reassured that my plan would result in the best possible outcomes, and also, you know, it forces me to feel reflective about some systems in our schools for handling money. Finally, I'm valuing professional response to the issue. I'm valuing trying to find the truth by having several conferences with a variety of people, promoting and upholding ethical and legal conduct, reviewing and upholding district policy, and then a commitment to new and implemented safeguards that would prevent this from happening in the future. Unresolved issues is, really the truth, knowing who stole the money, if it was stolen at all, or if it really was, an account of 10 damaged tickets. It's my contention that it was Mrs. Bowman, but since, like I said earlier, I can't prove it, I have to be okay with letting it go and really just closely monitor her behavior in the future. And like I said earlier, removing her from ticket taking and events and implementing those safeguards as previously stated. As far as reflecting on Standard 8, how did I, as a school leader, demonstrate knowledge and understanding of operational procedures at the school? I would seek help and input from the bookkeeper and district financial leaders, perhaps the superintendent, as mentioned, which demonstrates, I believe, my commitment to operational procedures as I work to learn what I can put in place and accordingly learn what and how PTA finances are run, or more thoroughly do so that this doesn't happen again. How did I, as a school leader, demonstrate my commitment to trusting stakeholders? I gotta trust Mrs. Bowman. I don't, but I think I have to come across as such so that I don't vilify myself against her and any other PTA parents should anybody else take her side over mine. I've got to demonstrate that trust in a variety of stakeholders. I have to take responsibility and be more involved with putting in safeguards so that I don't have to question their honesty. I have to take her word as truth. I don't think I would automatically remove her from her position at the PTA or even ticket taking. I think that shows trust and, redemption. If, it's like, look, I caught it and I'm on you, I'm on top of it, and I'm going to be watching you more closely. Let's make sure this doesn't happen again. I'm not necessarily about punishment, but I am about consequences and, shame on me, you, and then shame on me if it happens again. But I guess I'm willing to undertake that. Meeting with the rest of the PTA to strategize and problem solve shows the community at large that I have a commitment to using our funds for kids and trying to identify these if they exist. How did I ensure organizational systems are regularly monitored and modified? I think this shows some growth if you can get through something like this. It is kind of a slap in the face to think that somebody, a trusted community member and parent, would steal from you, and that they think that my credibility or authority isn't strong enough to catch them or do anything about it. So that meeting with the PTA and even the district too shows that my monitoring and modifying of our school finance system and handling of money needs some revision, again, to prevent this from happening in the future. I think implementing new safeguards such as 2 people working a ticket booth or computerizing the system or installing cameras allows for that monitoring and the reduced ability for volunteers or employees to commit theft, especially if I'm not aware of it. I utilized a variety of stakeholders throughout this process, which ensures kind of those organizational systems. The district policies, perhaps meeting with the superintendent to resolve this issue, the bookkeeper about policy, Mrs. Bowman obviously, and the rest of the PTA. Thank you so much for watching. This was my final video to record for my master's degree, and I'm so happy and proud to be done. And I appreciate all of the learning I've taken in for this class. I'll definitely be keeping this book, not a book I'll be returning. I think it's got a lot of useful stuff in it for everyone. So thank you so much, and have a great rest of your courses, and I really appreciate it. Thanks so much.